All right, so uh, good night, everyone. So I hope all of you are doing good. So last time we covered the topic of scope management, uh, and building on that, we will start our schedule management topic today. So schedule, I hope all of you are familiar. Schedule is all about time management or time related to uh, our project. Whatever schedule we have, the start date and the end date of the project, which is also one of the fundamental pieces of the definition of any project. That uh, project is a temporary endeavor. Temporary means it should have a start date and end date. So that is the start date and end date is basically our overall schedule. So this is how the schedule management process, when we talk about predictive methodology. So this is how the different processes are that are part of this schedule management knowledge area. So as usual, our first one is plan schedule management, where we will prepare our schedule management plan that will then guide us throughout the project with anything related to schedule management. After that, we define the activities, that what different activities are required to complete any work package, and then those work packages obviously they combine to give us some major deliverables or milestones, as we saw in the last session about when we talked about work breakdown structure. So once we have the activity list, so then we need to sequence those activities, that in what sequence uh, those activities should be performed to deliver our project. So this sequencing activities uh, then will give us our project network diagram, that this is how our project will be moving from start to end. So once we have this network diagram ready, we know what are the dependencies, which activity is dependent on which activity comes first, which activity is coming after it. So once we know that, so then we can estimate duration, that how much time will be required or resources will be required to complete that particular activity. And once we are all done with the estimation process, so this will help us building on our schedule, where we have the activity list, we know the network diagram, how different activities are related to each other, and what is the overall uh, duration of our project from start to end. So this process will give us our schedule baseline, which similar to the scope baseline. Once it is finalized, once it is approved by stakeholders, so this becomes a sort of a benchmark, and any changes later on, we need to follow the change mechanism process, which we have already discussed 2 3 times. And in execution, there is no particular process, because there in direct and managed project work we follow the schedule, and in monitoring and controlling, where we have control schedule process, where we do plan versus actual calculations. We see how we are progressing in terms of our planned schedule, and course correct any deviations, any challenges that we are facing. So this is how the entire schedule management process is all about. So let's take a deep look into each of these processes. Talking about project schedule, we know, I hope by this time you guys also understand and know that we have a high level project schedule already available, that is part of our project charter. That will help us in understanding that what is the approved schedule or overall high level duration that we need to respect when we are developing our schedule. So building on that high level schedule, then we can start working on that how we need to, uh, what different activities are involved, and how we can meet that particular schedule that is assigned to us. So for that, the tools and techniques that we can use to, let's say, start developing our schedule, or to start refining, or know what different activities can be involved, or how we can be proceeding with the scope management plan. So there we can utilize benchmarking, benchmarking our project with similar kind of projects, maybe in the industry or within the organization as well. And we can utilize historical data, which is basically our OPAs. So they can give us some foundational work or foundational data, which can then utilize to refine it further based on the requirements of our own project. So the first process is our schedule management process. As with all other management processes, this process will tell us that how we will be developing our schedule, what methodologies we will be using, like the critical path method, which is part of this PMI curriculum as well. Uh, how we are going to develop it, how we will be monitoring our schedule, and how any deviations or correction that may be required. So we will be dealing with that. So these will be the few components of our schedule management plan, like what methodology we will be using, like critical path method or maybe some other methodologies. What could be the accuracy in terms of that how much uh, deviation is acceptable, because obviously we cannot predict, or we cannot be 100% sure about anything related to schedule. And same goes for budgeting as well. So there is always a threshold, or some margins, or some limit, plus minus limitations are there. So what level of accuracy uh, can be there, or is acceptable, deviation is acceptable. Let's say if organization is such, their policy allows that you can have a plus minus 5%, plus minus 10%. So this kind of deviation, so this accuracy related information is can be part of our schedule management plan. How we are going to measure schedule related things, like in days, in weeks, in hours, man hours, how WBS will be used to develop schedule estimates, uh, what control thresholds can be there. Let's say uh, if we have a deviation of, uh, let's say, more than the acceptable limit, so how we are going to, let's say, escalate it, how we are going to share it with our stakeholders, and things like that. How uh, performance will be measured, like we will be utilizing earned value management or some other techniques to measure our performance. This earned value management we will talk about in the uh, cost related part, cost topic that is coming after this, and relay some information related to reporting, how the schedule related reports will be shared with the stakeholders, and some other data uh, related to scope escalations. These can be some of the components that can be part of our schedule management plan. So again, this is not a mandatory kind of thing that you need to follow all these things. It will depend on your how the organization wants to do it, how is the project environment, and then you can incorporate sufficient amount of information that can be part of your schedule management plan. And again, no need to remember these things. You just need to have an understanding that what components can be part of our schedule management plan. So once we have the schedule management plan, we know how we will be developing, monitoring, controlling, and are scheduled throughout the project. So the next process is where we define the activities. This is where, if you remember last time when we talked about work breakdown structure, so there we decompose the work package, the work breakdown structure till the work package level. Okay. So now, building on that work breakdown structure, when we come to the schedule part, so to deliver that particular work package or to complete that work package is the smallest piece of deliverable that we need to deliver. So to deliver that particular work package, there may be some 1, 2, 3, or no matter how many tasks can be required to complete that particular work package. So for this, we have this process which is called define activity, where we look at the work package and then we decide that how many or what type of activities we will be needing to complete this particular work package. So this is where this define activities process comes in. We look at every work package and then we write down or document what activities will be required, and that will then give us our activity list for the for every work package and ultimately for the complete project. Along with this, we will have activity attributes. We will talk about this in upcoming slide. What is activity attributes? And then based on this, we can develop some milestones as well. Like this could be a milestone, and which we will again talk about in the upcoming slides. Uh, and the tool technique that we utilize to define activities or to break down that work package into activity list is again the same tool that we utilized when we were decomposing our project and till the work package level. So here again, we will utilize the technique that is called decomposition tool. And rolling wave planning is utilized when we have, let's say, we are working in a kind and in an environment or in a project where as we saw example of construction project last time as well, where our WBS was like this. Let's say we have a work package related to feasibility. We had a work package related to design, or let's say these are the certain. So maybe at this point of time, if uh, my phase is related to feasibility, so maybe I am not bothered too much about going or working too much details on the construction related part, that how much uh, what kind of work packages can be there or what activities can be there, because that will depend on the feasibility studies and maybe the design part. So maybe initially when we are building our work breakdown structure and defining the activities, so we only define the work packages and the activities for these two uh, uh, work packages or these two milestones. Or maybe initially I am doing it only for the feasibility part, because based on the feasibility can affect my design. So initially, maybe our work package or our activity list is planned in detail for the feasibility part only. And once the feasibility is done, so then going into the design phase, we break it down further, and this goes on continuing till we reach to the end of the project. So this is what we call rolling wave planning, where we plan in detail for the near part or the upcoming phase of the project. And for the later parts, we have done a very high level kind of estimations or planning. And once we reach to that particular phase, so then we go into further details. So this is what a rolling wave planning technique is. So,
So Imran, just one question here.
yes.
So you mean that from the rolling wave planning is we need to focus on the most nearest the milestone or the phase of the project, right?
Yeah, this
Rest we have to have the high level details.
yes, yes. This is what
Um,
rolling wave planning is.
mhm. Okay.
Okay.
And when we talk about schedule management plan process, so um, in the predictive, do we need to create a document covering all the aspects related to the schedule management plan, which you explained in the previous slide?
Yes, that is purely related to predictive.
No, that is fine, but we have to create a document for that, right? Plan
Yes,
document.
yes, yes, yes. All
Okay.
all the documents like scope management plan, schedule management plan, stakeholder
Mhm.
engagement plan, communication management plan, these are written documents.
Okay, and there is one plan document that is comprising of everything.
That is the
Uh,
complete project management plan, which contains all these plans.
yes, so that document is having high level details or what for all the
That
processes?
that project management plan basically it contains all these plans. It is a combination of all these plans where when we go into the integration part, once we have all the plans ready. So
Mhm.
in integration management, we integrate all these plans. We take a higher level look that how different pieces are coming together, and then we have our complete project management plan. So this we will talk about in the last session when we talk about the integration knowledge area.
Okay, so to sum it up, what the understanding is, so the project management plan would be covering the plans, subsidiary plans for all the areas, right?
Yes, yes,
And and for sure, those would be having all the required details inside. Um, and we will be following like maybe a one document, and
yeah,
then we will be, let's say, moving on into to the respective phase of the project as the things go along, move.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
So
Just one question. If we
yes,
go back to the previous slide, I just want to recall what exactly is the terminology we are using. Rolling wave plan, or what
you
are
are
we calling
talking
it?
about this slide. Yes, rolling wave planning.
Rolling wave planning. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. And again, what we need to remember that uh, breaking down the work breakdown structure till work package level, this is part of scope management and activities, and breaking it further down till activities comes into schedule management. This is what you need to understand clearly. Maybe you can have some scenario based questions related to this, depicting a scenario. So you need to understand this, that work breakdown structure is broken down till work package level as part of a scope management area, and further decomposition till activity level happens in the schedule knowledge area. Okay, so again, this is what I was talking. I was just talking that about uh, work package level detail is part of scope management, and activities are created, or we have the activity list as part of schedule management area, and the technique that we are utilizing for complete WBS, whether it is the scope area or it is the schedule area, it is decomposition, breaking it down into the required level of details. And once we break down every work package or decompose it into activities. So we will have a complete activity list. We will know that these are the activities that I will be needing for my complete project. So as we saw in the case of work breakdown structure, that where we have a work breakdown structure and we had work breakdown structure dictionary. Yes, Usman.
Yes. So Imran, if we can go back to the previous slide, I saw something related to value management system. Yes. So if we can briefly discuss that, how do we um, use that, and in which process we do that?
This is an example of a work breakdown structure. This is not some terminology. This is just an
Okay.
example of a work breakdown structure. That this value management system is the complete project, and then we have these deliverables, and in the or you can say these are the work packages that are part of this project, and then these work packages will require these activities.
Okay.
To complete those work package or the complete project. This is just an example.
All right.
Okay.
So what is the Imran output of the time management here? We don't have any kind of process as per my knowledge. Time management. It's
Now,
it's the duration or this at
yes.
estimates for the activities, right?
Yeah, this is what we which we talked about earlier. So, right now we are in this process. Okay, we are defining the activities. Okay, once I know all the activities, so then we will start sequencing those activities. That okay,
Correct.
this activity will come first. These activities will be following it, and how the sequence will be. So
Order, yeah.
that sequence will give us our project network diagram. And
Mm-hmm.
then once we have the diagram ready, we know what are the dependencies, what are the leads, lags. So
Yeah,
based on
correct.
that, we will develop our estimates. And once we have all the estimates, so that will give us our complete project schedule. Okay.
Right, yeah, clear. Thank you.
So so as we saw in the case of work breakdown structure, where we have a work breakdown structure and we had an associated document which was work breakdown structure dictionary, which carried detail related to each and every work package. That what is the work package, what is its ID, what deliverable it is going to deliver, how, what is the schedule, what is the cost related to it. So similarly, for each and every activity, we have another supporting document that we call activity attribute. That activity attribute will contain all the details related to each and every activity. What is the ID of that particular activity, to which work package or work breakdown structure item that activity is related to, what is the name of the activity, what is the description of that particular activity, are there any predecessor or successor activities for this particular activity, any lead lag related information, how many resources are required, what is the schedule, any constraints, assumptions, risk related to this. So for that, to look into detail of every of for any activity, we need to refer to the activity attribute document of that particular activity. And these are the two main outputs of this particular define activity process. One is the activity list, and the other is activity attributes. This is what we will be getting as an output from this particular process of define activities. And once we have the activities, so then we can once we go to the work package level, so then we can decide that what different milestones can be there for our project. And for milestones, we also need to remember that milestone is a significant point in time or the duration of the project, and they have zero limitation. Because there is no activity that is being done there. It is just an amalgamation or a combination of activities that are giving us some important output. So once we have the activity list, we know the activity attributes, so then we can start sequencing those activities. And this will give us maybe a network diagram like this, where we know which activity is the starting point and which activity will be, or activities will be following it, and then building on that, we can finally reach to the end of our project, and we can have a look, one consolidated view that how different activities are integrated from start to end. Yes, Usman?
So in the previous slide, we discussed that defined activities have two output. One is activity list and the other one is activity attributes. If you can go back to the previous slide.
Yes.
So comprehensive list of all activities required for the project completion, that makes sense. And then we have activity attributes. What does it mean, activity attributes?
We just discussed this here. Activity attribute, basically it gives you the detail for each and every activity. Activity list simply a list that let's say 1, 2, 3, 400. This is the activity. But for every activity, the detail, particular detail related to it, we need to refer to activity attributes. What is the ID, which work package it is serving, what is the name, what any predecessor, successor, lead lags, resources required, schedule related to it. All these details will be documented in activity attributes. Okay. So sequence activities will give us our project network diagram, and for that, the methodology that we can use is precedence network diagramming method. And we also can utilize leads and lags. So let's see what these things are. So when we talk about sequencing activities, so there are always some dependencies that can be there in between the activities. So dependency can be any logical kind of relationship between any particular activities, and that will define us that how we need to sequence those activities. Let's say, let's talk about the construction project. So we cannot start work unless we have, let's say, some permits. So that is a dependency. I cannot start maybe excavation unless I have the permissions, or maybe the required fencing work is done, or I have the required material, required tools, required labor available. So these are the dependencies that are in between each and every activity. Maybe if I need to, let's say, once my structure is ready and I need to do the paint work, so maybe I need to give it some time to settle down, or the concrete part, or the plaster, or whatever finishing work we have done. So there are always certain dependencies between activities that we need to understand to make a proper sequence out of the activity list that we have. So talking about dependencies, so there we have 4 main type of dependencies can be there. The first one is mandatory dependency, which is kind of hard logic, which is, you can say, it is something that is inherent in the nature of work that we are doing, or maybe we are contractually bound to perform it this way. Like we just saw an example that we cannot start the excavation or construction work unless we have the permissions ready. So that is a mandatory kind of thing, and this could be an external dependency as well, because it is something that we are bound to follow due to certain regulations or government related obligations. So these are the mandatory or external kind of dependencies are such that as a project manager or as a project team, we have no control on it. We have to live with this dependency, and we have to schedule uh, uh, accordingly. Then comes the discretionary dependency. Discretionary are kind of, let's say, best practices that are being followed all over the industry or all over the world, but you are not bound to follow these as it is. So let's say one discretionary dependency example could be if you are writing a report. So once you wait for the complete report to finish, and then you can start reviewing it or editing it. But that is something maybe you want to do not want to follow as it is. Maybe you decide that, let's say, if half the work is done, so now I can start editing it or reviewing it. So this is kind of soft logic. You can go around the best practice if you need to maybe squeeze your schedule or you need to do something quickly. So this is discretionary. That is up to you as a project manager, and you can play around it as and when required. And internal
Imran,
dependence.
sorry.
Okay.
Can you please explain again?
Which one? Discretionary?
Yes, I missed it.
Discretionary is something that is considered as a best practice. Okay. Normally people follow it as it is, but this is not something that you have to do it 100% like this. You can work around it, or you can maybe do something else instead. Like I've given the example, okay, let's say if you are writing a report, or let's take another example. Let's say let's go back to the same example. You have the gray structure ready, or let's say you are working on a home. You are doing the finishing work. So rather than normally, what is the best practice, that you try to complete the complete finishing work, the walls and everything ready. You keep give it time to settle down, to dry the plaster work or everything, and then you start the paint work. This is what I best practice kind of thing is. But let's say you decide that rather than waiting for complete house to finish, let's say I can start doing the paint work room by room as soon as one
Partially.
room is ready.
You mean
Yeah.
to say partial work, right?
Yeah. Once the room is ready, it is settled down. So then I can start painting the room, and I can make my sequence accordingly. This will save me time. So this is also an example of discretionary dependency, where you have the margin you can play around as a project manager. And it can also be considered as an internal dependency, which is your project work. You decide how I want to do it, rather than let's say you are working on writing a code or writing a software. So maybe rather than waiting for the complete code to finish and then you start testing it, or maybe performing tests on it, you can start doing it simultaneously as well. So these are the few dependency types that we need to understand, and then based on whatever the type of dependency is, so then we may need to start sequencing accordingly.
Imran, the mandatory one is basically the dependency that maybe some of the work is, let's say, has to be done first, and the other work probably has to be managed later. So that is marked as a mandatory one, right? I mean, there is a logical relationship between two activities which cannot be done in parallel.
In parallel, yes, exactly. They say you cannot start the concrete work unless you have done the excavation. That is something that is mandatory or inherent in the nature of work. Or you may be contractually bound, or you may be legally bound to do it like this. Let's say you
So we
need
are
to have the
dependent. We
permits.
are dependent. Activities are okay.
Okay. And there are some task related dependencies as well. Maybe when we talk about precedence relationships, so how we want to, let's say, us carry out or how different tasks are dependent on each other. So for this, we have these four type of task dependencies which can be there in any project or any sequence of activities. So the first one is finish to start. By the way, has any one of you heard about these or read about these earlier, or is this something new to this
No,
finish to start? Or
I worked on Microsoft project, so how to prepare a schedule. So I know these are logical relationships. Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's good. So at least one is here. Maybe some more are also here. Maybe they but okay, let's talk about these. So what is Bilal, what do you think? Which one of these is the most commonly used one?
Uh, in my opinion, start to finish.
Okay. So let's see. So
Oh,
let's see
sorry,
first.
finish to start. Sorry. So yeah,
Yes, this is
finish
the
to
most
start.
commonly one.
Yeah.
Yes. So what are these basically? You need to understand it like this: that finish to start. Uh, Finish. This is about the predecessor activity, the activity that comes first, and this is the successor activity that is coming after it.
After.
Okay. So finish to start means that activity A has to finish before we can start activity B. Okay.
Correct.
So an example of it could be, one example is mentioned here, like excavation and foundation work, that you cannot start the foundation work until and unless we have the excavation done. Okay. So this is my
Yeah.
task A and this is my task B. The other one is another example could be, let's say you are baking a cake, so you cannot start or you cannot start decorating the cake, which is activity B, unless you have baked it, which is activity A. So this is finish to start. The second one is start to start, which is that activity B can only start once you have started activity A as well. Okay. So let's say, what can be an example of this? Can any one of you give an example of this? Start to start.
This is very rarely actually used, but yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
Because so B activity has to be started, and then A activity can be
Activity.
start. Yeah.
No. Activity B can only start if activity A has already started. Anything that comes to anyone's mind.
So I believe the situation can be like, let's say, for a software project, we have collected the requirements. So that is activity A, and then design, we can only do that once the requirement has been started collecting, for instance, in an agile format. So that could
Yeah,
be the situation.
yes, that could be an example. And another example could be, let's say, you have more or less similar example. Let's say you have task A, which is about designing the homepage of your website, and task B is about coding for that. So until unless you have some requirements related to design, or you have some designing work started, only then you can start coding for it. So this can also be an example of it. Okay. So, but this is obviously something that is very rarely used. And the third one is finish to finish, which is that you task B can only finish when task A has already finished. So, an example of it could be, again, I'll go back to the example that I gave earlier. That let's say you are writing a report. So unless you complete writing the report or the report writing is complete, only then you can complete the editing part of it. Maybe you are working on in parallel on both the things. You are writing the report and you are reviewing it or editing it as well, which is your task B. But you cannot say that my editing is 100% complete until unless you are done with writing the report as well. Okay, so this is it could be an example of finish to finish, and the last one is start to finish, which is that activity B can only finish until activity A has already started. So a very common example of this is can be seen in when we have some shifts working there anywhere. So let's say you have a night shift, a morning shift, which is let's say activity A, and you have a night shift, which is we can say activity B. So these night shift workers, they can only finish their duty till these morning guys have started resuming their duties in place of the people who are there in night shift or the task B. So this could be an example of start to finish. So based on the nature of work or how different activities are dependent on each other, so we can utilize these kind of dependencies, which we can then display or portray through our network diagram. So I hope these four are clear to all of you. If you have any question related to this, you can ask, else we can move forward.
Just one question, Imran. I mean, though understanding is clear, but this arrow depicting is the arrow basically between activity A and activity B. Is there any depiction for that, or just
You see, all the arrows are going from A to B. So let's not bother about these arrows too much. As long as you understand what is the linkage, so then you are good to go. Okay.
Okay.
And then we have lead and lags as well that we utilize to optimize our schedule. So what are these? What is let's talk about what is a lag. Lag is the amount of time that we need to give in between certain activities. Let's say in between two activities before the next activity start, I need to give some settlement time or some resting period, which may be due to the type of dependency that is between those activities. So let's say again the same example can fit here as well, that you are working on your structure and now you need to move to the paint work. So then obviously you need to have some lag in between, that once your finishing work is complete, your plaster work is complete, then you need to give it some settlement time. Same goes for the concrete work, that once you are done with concreting work, so you need to give it some time to settle it so that it gets the required strength, and then you can start working towards other activities. So this is what we call lag, which is basically the amount of time that we need to give for the in between activities. And
Such type
lead
of
time,
example you given is uncontrolled, right?
sorry,
ये जो अभी एग्जांपल तुमने दी है जो पेंट वर्क की उस वॉल ड्राई होने तक या उसके सेटलमेंट टाइम तक, तो ये अनकंट्रोल होता है बेसिकली.
yeah, obviously that is
Sometimes,
kind of
ठीक है.
because you need to give it some time period as well. Because if you start painting it immediately, so then you know what will happen. The paint will lose its strength maybe after some time. Okay, and lead time is the amount of time by which we can pull any activity forward due to maybe we need to squeeze our schedule So there we need see activities that can run in parallel, although initially we may have planned them in a sequence like this. Let's say writing report and editing the report. But if you see that rather than waiting for complete report to finish, I can pull it forward. So this can squeeze our schedule, and we can have some lead time in between, so that we can work on both the activities in parallel. So this is the concept behind leads and lags. And once we have the leads and lags established, we know how the activities are dependent on each other, or maybe what kind of task related dependencies are between tasks. So this will give us our schedule network diagram. Here it is an example of a schedule network diagram, that how uh, it is starting and how it will finally reach to the conclusion. Uh, and in Agile, we know we do not have that kind of detailing involved, that we need to define the activities, or maybe we need to do or look at different type of sequencing, or having a network diagram like this. We have the product backlog, which is जो कि सारे मर्ज की दवा है एजाइल में. So we have the product backlog, the priority that is there, we need to follow it, and we have the sprint cycle, or we have the sprints, which can be 1 to 4 weeks. So based on that, we will start delivering it accordingly. And this is just a mind map of sequence activities process that we discussed till now. You can have a look at it later on. And once we have the complete network diagram available, we know how the tasks are related to each other, what are the leads, lags. So now we can start estimating that how much duration will be required, or resources will be required for each and every activity. So this is where this estimate duration process comes in. So when estimating durations, obviously we need to understand that what type of resources we will be needing, human or physical resources, or in the form of any machinery, tools, office spaces, what kind of risks can be there. So based on this information, so we will start developing our estimates related to each and every activity. And for estimation, we can utilize any of these 4 techniques. The first one is analogous estimation. Analogous estimation is simply utilizing the historical data and putting it as it is. Like, let's say I have done a similar kind of project, and I know that for this kind of project, I needed this much time, so I can copy paste it as it is. So that will become my. This is where we are utilizing historical data and utilizing it for the sake of our project. So what is the drawback of this analogous estimation? That this can be accurate as well. Maybe we have not encountered all the things related to our current project, and maybe the quality of the historical data that we are referring to, it is not that good. So in those scenarios, we can have some wrong kind of estimations. But the advantage is that it is less costly, less time consuming, and but again, there is some flip side as well in terms of disadvantages as well. The second one is parametric estimation, which is basically doing some quantitative calculation based on parameters, certain parameters that we may have from the market or from some historical background. So let's say I have the data, or I have the information that to construct, to do the foundation work, let's say it will cost me, let's assume anything, $200 per square feet. Okay. So this is the data that I have. So based on this parameter or parametric data, I see, okay, per square feet, this is the rate that I can assume. So if I have 100 square feet area, so let's multiply this by this, and then I can build my estimate. And same goes for schedule as well, that I know that to construct a per cubic meter foundation, this is the time that I will be requiring. So depending on the area that I need to cover, I multiply by it, and I get the schedule related to it. So this is what we call parametric estimation. The third one is bottom-up estimation. Bottom-up estimation is where we look at each and every activity, and we start building from right from the first activity till each and every activity, and then we try to develop as accurate estimates as possible. For this, we may need to talk to the team members who are actually doing that work. We need to understand, talk to them, and see how much time is required for that particular activity. And this will give us a very accurate kind of estimation, but again, it will be time consuming, and it can be utilized once in scenarios where we have a very well-defined kind of activity list, and we know the complete work packages and everything. And the
Imran,
fourth,
in the
yes,
parametric one, you mentioned the data like 200 square feet. Is it the assumption probably that we took for the parametric estimation? Something like that?
it could be an assumption. It could be, let's say, you do some market research and you see that, okay, this is how, and maybe you are utilizing some historical data that for at that for this particular area, the last time we had or it required this much time. So let's see that my area is now this, so let's multiply it, and then we will utilize this parametric estimation to develop a schedule this time as well.
And
Okay.
what about 3-point?
I'm coming to it.
Okay.
The last one is 3-point estimation. 3-point estimation, it basically takes into account 3 different kind of estimates. Okay. And it will give us an an approximate range that how our average kind of, let's say, schedule or cost can be. So for this, we utilize 3 data sets. Let's say we talk about that I have to, let's say, construct a house. So if I am being very optimistic, so my optimistic estimate is that it will require, let's say, 6 months to complete that particular house. If I am being too pessimistic, so I'm saying that it will require a year to complete. And most likely, I say that it will be completed in 8 months. So these are the 3 ranges that I have, depending on accounting for the best case scenario, the worst case scenario. You can take it like this as well, or the middle ground. So once we have these 3 kind of, again, this is something very qualitative. You may be talking to different people, different, let's
This
say,
is also
subject
coming
matter
from
experts.
the historical data, maybe past
Yes.
projects. Yeah.
Yeah, you can be utilizing historical data as well, or maybe you are talking to people, subject matter experts, your team members, or maybe your sponsor, and then you are getting these 3 estimates. So based on these 3 estimates, so then we utilize this formula, very simple kind of formula. And we call it beta distribution as well, and we call it PERT as well. These are the 2 more names that are given to this 3-point estimation. All are same. So once we have those 3 estimates, optimistic one, pessimistic one, and most likely one. So by putting these into this formula, we will know that what could be the duration that we can estimate for this particular activity or this overall schedule. So as in this example, let's say we have the optimistic duration of 3 weeks, a pessimistic duration of 7 weeks, and most likely duration of 4 weeks. So when we put all these into this formula, so there, this is what this formula is giving, that by based on these three data points, the probabilistic average will be 4.3 weeks for this particular activity, and then we can incorporate it accordingly in our schedule. But again, the methodology or technique that we are going to follow, it is basically documented in our scope management plan. If our scope management plan, we have agreed that we will be utilizing this 3-point estimation, so then we will be following it for schedule related part. And these same 4 techniques are utilized in budgeting as well when we are doing estimation related to the cost part. So again, we can utilize any of these 4 techniques to develop the budget part for our project.
So Imran, can you go back to previous slide? So just to sum it up, the techniques.
Okay.
So analogous is the one based on the historical data. Like for example, if any past projects have been delivered, right? So
Yes.
probably from there where we will get to know. For the
Yes.
parametric one, we are using some parameters to estimate, like you mentioned, square foot, and that we can also ask from the subject matter expert or from the historical data. Because, for example, let's say construction projects, this is very common that to estimate the cost. So we always need to have this square feet value, right?
Mhm.
So which one basically would be the best approach, or that can give us better estimation? I understand that this cannot be 100% accurate, but in your opinion, for predictive projects, to deliver the projects within the schedule, so which is the most preferable estimation technique that are used? From
I won't say preferable. Obviously, it will depend on your scenario. That what suits you in that particular scenario. Okay. Maybe at the start of the project, where you do not have a lot of information available, you have limited data. So then at that point of time, maybe you are utilizing analogous estimation. And once you go into detail, so then maybe if you want a very thorough kind of or very accurate kind of estimation, so then in that scenario, bottom up estimation is the best one, best suited, where you break down everything into detail into small parts and then you start building on that. So this will give you a very accurate kind of estimation, but it will be time consuming. So depending on the your requirement, your scenario, the time you have, so then you can utilize any of the technique that suits you best at that point of time. Maybe your organization does not bother too much about, you have a lot of you can have some margin to play. Let's say in a schedule you can go, let's say 10-15% plus minus. So then in that scenario,
normally it happens,
yeah. So then you do not need to maybe bother too much about going into detail. You can utilize parametric or analogous, and that's fine.
But this is not, I think, PMI best practice, right?
PMI does not, let's say, does not
Limit.
pinpoint any particular estimation technique that you need to follow. They have just given these, and again, based on your requirement, you can, whichever suits you more, you can utilize it.
So these are all for predictive, right? We cannot use any, or we can use for IT projects as well, like maybe because we are have for hybrid one, can we use that, or for a other agile
Yeah,
one?
in Agile, since we have user stories, so there we use user story points. Okay, and we
What
will
about
talk
hybrid?
about this.
Yeah.
In hybrid is a combination of both. So depending on in hybrid which methodology currently you are in, if you are following
Mm,
a predictive phase, you are in a
mm,
predictive phase, so then obviously you need to follow it accordingly. And if you are in agile phase, so then you need to follow the agile ones.
mm.
Okay.
Okay, so in the hybrid, we talked about previously that um, maybe the design part can be agile, but the delivery part can be, and development approach can be plan oriented, right? Or the
Mm.
yeah, plan oriented. Can it be other way around as well? Like maybe initial, if let's say, because in a very refined view from the project perspective is, if requirement is clear, then it's predictive,
Mm.
right? If requirement is basically you can say to be evolved, okay, then of course we need to adjust our approach based on, like, maybe of course we have to see we are uncertain about the scope of the projects scope or the requirements from the customer, so we need to see agile or maybe um, iterative or this incremental one. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my point is, can it be other way around in your and experience? I mean, or this has to be fixed, or this would be subject to depending upon the requirement. Because I have seen that in the organization that I work, where the requirements was very well defined in the RFP documents, right? Um, and then, of course, delivery approach, they're just maybe, let's say, which delivery approach we need to adopt, right? So it seems to us that probably scope of work is very well articulated, and from that perspective, it is predictive. But when we talk about the delivery, so where the methodology is either let's go for agile because they see that the product has to be build with the constant feedback. So then that part is agile. So is that possible?
Yes, that can be. Uh, if you remember the Stacy diagram that we talked in the
Hmm.
first session,
Correct, correct, correct. I know
so
that.
the scenario that you are mentioning here, if I understood it correctly, so you
Hmm.
are saying that the change is not that much expected. The
Correct.
scope of work is very well defined, but maybe you need to deliver it incrementally
Yeah,
based on the
correct.
feedback.
Very well. Yeah,
So,
very
so,
correct. Yeah.
so then that is incremental methodology. It is another adaptive kind of methodology. But
Hmm.
we are talking about incremental delivery. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
in
Okay,
this
right.
scenario. Okay,
But
uh,
incremental is
where you
the
deliver in pieces,
yeah.
bit by
But this
bit.
is the approach, right? This is
Yeah.
approach, right?
Yes.
This is
Yes.
not a methodology, we would say, right? Or this is
This is a methodology:
method.
predictive, incremental, iterative, and
Okay, okay,
agile.
right.
Agile.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, right. Okay.
This can be the area. Yes, Man, you also raised your hand.
Yes, so basically, I think Bilal's question, I was trying to answer it, and maybe I think you have already done it. The frequency of change defines it, and how the frequent scope can be changed. So
Yeah.
that it was the definitive criteria that which
Mm.
strategy should be followed.
Yeah. So that's why if you guys remember this Stacy diagram, so
Yes.
that will make things very easy. Okay, let's move forward. And
Just one
there are
thing, just one
yes.
thing. I mean, with 3-point estimation, there is also another variation which is called as triangular distribution.
Yeah, that is also there, and that is very simple. Where you have do not have this, and this is 3. Simple. We call it triangular distribution.
Right. And also I had one question. So for instance, from exam perspective,
Mhm.
do we have any preference that which estimation method we should focus more, or any other recommendation around that?
No, you just need to, if you understand this, maybe the scenario will ask you that this is how the estimation is done. So which estimation they are using, whether analogous, parametric, 3-point or bottom up. So if you understand this, then you will be good to go. And very in some cases, maybe although the chances are less, maybe you have so to do some calculation on this, you have the estimates given, and then you need to tell what is the estimation for this. But very rare chance of a question like this coming. More or less, it will be a scenario that this is how the team or project team has done estimation. So what type of estimation they have used. Okay.
Can it be a combination of two? Because I see maybe there can be a scenario. Do you think that is maybe analogous with 3-point or
No, no. The scenario will lead you to only one of these, because then there will be a confusion that what could be the right answer. Okay.
yeah, I mean, yeah, from a exam perspective, yes, but in the actual scenario, maybe I some um
In practical scenario, since you are taking these 3 estimates, these are also 3 different estimates. So maybe these 3 estimates are coming with an analogous mindset, or maybe they are coming from parametric mindset. So it can come with any mindset. So in that scenario, yes, you can say that maybe uh, we have utilized analogous estimation here, or maybe parametric here. Let's say you can say that this one is coming from the bottom of estimation. This one is coming from, let's say, analogous, or this one is coming from maybe parametric, whatever you can say. So based on this, in practicality, you can utilize it like this, but let's forget about
okay,
it till the exam.
okay, right.
Okay. Okay, so some more thing that we need to understand when we are talking about, or when we are developing any estimates, some important laws that we need to understand. First one is the law of diminishing returns. Any idea about this? What this law is?
Heard for the first time.
Okay.
That means that if we do something again and again, the returns that we receive, the utility of this thing diminishes with time, with use.
Okay. Yes. Yes, what the law of diminishing return in the perspective that we are discussing, let's see in that perspective what Zain said, it's also right. That since we are talking about estimation, schedule related estimation, let's say, so schedule means that if I increase the what generally comes to my mind, that, or anyone's mind, that let's say I need to construct a house. So if I or let's say let's take a smaller example. Let's say I need to paint a room. So if I employ one painter, so he will finish the job in, let's say, 4 days. But if I increase it to 2, it will complete the work in 2 days. If I increase it to 3, it may complete it in 1.5 days. If I increase it to 4, then maybe they start fighting with each other, and it will not serve the purpose. So this is what law of diminishing returns is, that keep on adding resources will give you some benefit at some till some point of time, and after that the value that is coming from that, it will start diminishing. So you need to find the optimal point where you can get the maximum kind of efficiency, rather than you keep on adding resources and ultimately adding more resources. Maybe they can start hindering their each other's work. They may it may increases some risks, some rework related things. So this is what law of diminishing returns says, that uh, adding
How to
on
determine
resources. Sorry.
how to determine the optimum point
That will
by
again that will again depend on your judgment. There is no formula for it or nothing to it. You need to understand on the scenario. Like we have just discussed a very simple example of painting a room, which everyone of else can relate to. That giving a 10 by 13 or 12 by 14 room to four painters, so ultimately they may start hindering each other's work, or maybe someone is sitting idle waiting for someone else work to finish, then he can start his own work. So this is what we need to take into account when we are developing estimates or talking about resources. Another is Parkinson law.
Sir, if we
Parkinson law
sum it
talks
up,
about.
pardon.
Mhm.
So if we sum it up, law of diminishing returns, it means that by adding more resources, we won't produce the actual output. We might also impact the schedule, correct? Or
Uh, uh, this law of diminishing return can be applied to some other areas as well, into the budget as well, not specific to schedule. It is just a law that simply states that adding more resources, more people, more budget to something, assuming that you will complete it faster, it may work to a certain point, but after that, you will not be able to get the required amount of efficiency that you are aiming. So you need to find that optimal point which your project or your organization allows. And beyond that, you should be avoiding going that, because it may, rather than giving you the advantage, it may start giving you the disadvantages. Yeah.
right, so it means that by adding more resources at a time, I mean, for instance, if we start adding more resources today, we might get the desired results, right? But maybe if we do it tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, it won't produce more value, correct? If I understood.
No. We are talking about estimations. So let's say you work in the software industry. Okay, let's think of an example from there. So let's say you need to build a software. Okay, and you have done similar kind of projects earlier as well. So when you are doing estimations, so then you plan that, okay, uh, I can do this work with uh, let's say four people. Okay, but then you think that if I complete this with four people, so it will require, let's say, 3 weeks or a month. What if I add one more person or two more persons? So then maybe I can squeeze it down to 20 days. But then uh, this can increase some risks, some issues. Maybe the resources are not that competent enough that you are adding, or maybe the nature of work is such that there may be some idle time in between, where two of the resources or one of the resources, they are waiting for someone else work to complete. So this is also an inefficiency, and this can, rather than giving you the advantage which you assume that you will be finishing it in 20 days, so you may start losing time, and your output can also be of not required quality. So this is what this law is all about, that you need to find the right balance in terms of resources, in terms of budgeting, where you can get the maximum benefit out of whatever you are planning. Okay. The second one is Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law, again, it is talking about any estimations, especially if we talk about a schedule. So what this Parkinson law states that work will expand to fill the time that you are giving for its completion. So what does this mean? That if you give someone too much time to finish a task, they will take all of the time. And this is what we do as well. If I am given a week by my boss to complete a report, I will make sure that I'm utilizing the entire week. Okay. Maybe in the first 2 days, I'm doing nothing, relaxing. I know this is a small task. I can complete it in easily in the remaining days. So this is what uh, Parkinson law states, that it is important to understand that you need to allocate ample time that improves efficiency, and you are not wasting resources. If you have given someone any task and there is too much, let's say, leverage or relaxation in between, so then it is also a waste, which you need to be or which you need to understand, and you need to build your schedule accordingly. This is what Parkinson law, and this is something that we also need to take into account when we are doing schedule related estimations.
So
And the third one is,
in
yeah,
summary, it says that we need to find the right time, right estimate,
yeah,
because too less
right
time
estimate.
frustration, too much time waste.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to find the right balance here. If a task that can be completed in 5 days, so then you should have maybe 5 days or at maximum 6 days, rather than allocating 10, 12 days for that particular task. The third one is student syndrome. I hope you guys might have heard about this, or
Studying
this is
on
also
the last night of the exam, is it so?
yeah, exactly. This is what a student syndrome is. We have a lot to cover yet. Okay.
Same applies for PMP exam as well.
Yeah, I was about to come. I was about to mention that.
Good one.
So that's why when we come to this student syndrome, that's what I recommend each and every one of my students, that you should be having a date in your mind, or you should be booking your exam date as soon as possible. Because once you have the date, at least this student syndrome will trigger some point of time, and then you can start working towards it. But if you do not have a date, so then obviously uh, then there is no limit to it. So yeah,
Boss, so
if a
for me,
student,
it's going to be end of January or start of Feb. So I'll finalize that soon.
okay, so then you need to start working on your application.
Sure, I'll chat with you on this.
Okay. So student syndrome is that whenever any milestone is coming, so then your efforts increase, and before that maybe you are wasting time, and this happens with all of us. The example related to exam is very, I guess, relevant to all of us, or maybe any assignments that we need to complete. So again, like the Parkinson law, how we can avoid this student syndrome from the team? Maybe we can employ regular check-ins. If we have a monthly report or a weekly report that is supposed to be submitted by team members, so then maybe we can have some, or we can employ some check-ins in between after every 2 days, so that the team knows that they will be asked about it, and they do not leave work for the end, because doing work at the end, it can increase risks, it can affect the quality of the deliverables. So This is what student syndrome is all about. So when we are estimating or we are doing estimations, so understanding these three laws or these two laws and this student syndrome, if we have this in mind, so then we can make or develop a better kind of estimates for our project. So now let's talk about how estimation.
One thing,
Yeah.
maybe one example of a real problem. Whenever basically business guys they deal with the proposal, so they I mean give the estimates as a part of the proposal and submit to the client, maybe
Mhm.
so that they can win the proposal or the project, right? Okay. So probably that is most of the time I've seen that that is aggressive, right? So, for example, if they won the project and after that, when it comes to the realization of the project, so um, the delivery team straight away in the extreme pressure. Okay, that for example, we have to deliver it in a 2 or 3 months span of time. So in this, so this is a real problem I myself have noticed, and these are two different dimensions in my opinion. One is business. The second one is, of course, delivery. So if let's say um, they give the timelines, maybe a bit relaxed, then there is a fair chance that they probably will not be able to win the project. So in that case, what would be the best course of action or the approach?
You have to live with it. If you do not cannot exercise any authority, which is what happens, so then what you can do, you have to obviously respect that agreement that you have, and this is what normally happens. This
No,
happens
that's why
with
I'm saying, because
this this is
because
what
these are
happens
mm,
because the scenario that we are discussing is kind of a very ideal kind of scenarios that PMI thinks or how the best practices should be, but normally, especially in Pakistan, what happens? What PMI says, or what we are right now studying, that you have the activity list, you have the work package, you have the activity, then you sequence them, then you do this, and then you develop the schedule. In Pakistan, we do the reverse. We have the
correct.
deadline first,
Yeah.
okay,
That's why I
and
feel
then
this
we
is a
start
problem.
the reverse engineering. So, but again, you need to do your best. You need to remember the tailoring concept. जहाँ जुगाड़ लग सकती है वहाँ जुगाड़ लगाएं and try to deliver as per the deadline which is somehow imposed on you, and this happens with all of us all the time.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, because then this has implications. I mean, of course, because you have to add more resources to, pull the schedule back.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then there is the voices came from different functional managers that you're
Obviously, that may increase your cost
yes,
baseline as
correct.
well. Your whatever you have budgeted earlier, it can have a lot of risk. Your quality can get affected. So a
Hmm.
lot of problems and they actually happen as well.
Hmm.
You may be delivering some low quality work or something that are left behind. So I
Hmm.
honestly I keep doing it all the time just to
Hmm.
meet those sometimes unrealistic kind of timelines. But then obviously we need to rectify it, and as we go along, so there is a cycle which everyone within the organization, they are now aligned. They know that okay, this is what the minimum acceptable criteria is. So
Hmm.
we try to at least deliver that till that minimum acceptable criteria, and the rest
Hmm.
of the things we can take care later on. This is how at least we do it. So this is the approach maybe you can employ as well.
ये मुझसे
right.
बेहतर तो वैसे कोई नहीं जान सकता इमरान, और तुम
हाँ
मोबिलिंग में किस तरह से, ये मुझसे बेहतर कोई नहीं जान सकता जो तुम कह रहे हो अभी। तो मोबिलिंग में जो तुम जिस तरह हम लोगों से काम कराते रहे हो मुझे याद है।
मोबिलिंग में होता ही ऐसे था।
नहीं, असल में ये
ये
जिस डिपार्टमेंट से,
ये
ये जिस डिपार्टमेंट को छोड़ के गए थे ना, उस डिपार्टमेंट में मैंने ज्वाइन किया
बिलाल
था, तो इन्होंने सारे पिछले बदले मुझसे निकाले हैं। ठीक है ना, कि ये टाइम फ्रेम ही
बिल,
दे देते थे कि भाई इसमें ये काम करके देना है तुमने, जो कि नहीं हो सकता था और हम करते थे। आई रिमेम्बर।
बिलाल बिलाल भी जैज में रह चुके हैं, और
बिलाल जैज में रह
तो
चुके हैं, लेकिन भाई मैं तुम्हारे साथ
ही
काम किया
नोज
इसलिए
वेरी
बोल
वेल।
रहा हूँ।
मैंने
मे,
मैंने मैंने कंपनी मूवी इसलिए की थी कि मैं थोड़ा प्रोसेस ओरिएंटेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में जाना चाहता था टेलीनॉर में।
मेरे मेरे साथ तो अदील, अब तो मेरा मुंह ना खुलवा अभी, जो है ना। लेट्स
चलिए अभी,
कम बैक
अभी
टू द
अभी तो मैं ये कह
डिस्कशन।
रहा था नहीं नहीं, ठीक है करो, बिल्कुल
अच्छा,
सही है।
इसमें जस्ट एक ऐड करूं, आई मीन व्हेन इट कम्स टू क्लाइंट प्रोजेक्ट्स, सो फाइन, सो देयर इज अ स्पेशल कैटेगरी टू बी ऑनेस्ट, especially in Pakistan government projects. there there are always directives, right? Okay, for example, this work has to be completed in 1 week time, for example, or maybe 2 days or 3 days. So I mean, I was thinking like how to, I mean, though I managed couple of small projects uh, from the PTA, but I mean, it is always tricky to deal such projects when the stakes are too high. So best approach is to sit together and align on the strategy. Yep.
Yes, you need to deliver. You need to understand this thing, value.
Well, yeah,
You are there to generate value for your organization. So sometimes you have to do it like this. Sometimes आपको कान उल्टा पकड़ना पड़ता है. So that's fine, as long
correct.
as you are within the acceptable boundaries, and
Hmm.
uh, maybe some ethical practices, whatever your organization or your scenario lies. So
Just
that
take an
is fine.
example of tax related changes, for example. If this has to be enforced,
Yeah,
so I mean, of course, there will be stringent timelines for that, for sure.
yeah, obviously. So yes, these scenarios come and go. You have to live with it, and every this kind of situation is an experience of its own. You learn from it. You try to improve, but somehow we do not improve. We keep on doing the same things again and again.
I believe that then PMI practices probably uh, will not be guiding us on those things, right? Then, what do you think, Imran?
No, obviously, at least till your exam, आपने ये वाली टोपी पहन के रखनी है बस. Once you are done with.
Well, I think I have a difference of opinion. At least I think we might not be able to implement whatever we are studying, but at least we can introduce few changes whenever and wherever we have the capacity to do so.
Exactly. That's
Hmm.
very right. So, okay, now let's come back to the topic. We still have a lot to cover. So now let's talk about how estimation is done in Agile. In Agile, we know we have the sprints, 1 to 4 week sprint. So how estimation or how effort required to creation of any user story is done in Agile. So in Agile, we talk about relative estimation. We do not talk about the particular activity level. We do not break it down till the task or activity level. This is not what we do in Agile. In Agile, we have the user story, and for that, any particular user story that is accepted, that is agreed, that have the relevant acceptance criteria associated to it. So then, based on that particular user story, the team now decides that how much effort is required uh, to complete that particular user story. how much uncertainty is revolving around that particular user story to develop it, how much, let's say, risk can be there. So based on, or maybe you can say that how much experience the particular team has in developing that kind of scenario. So based on these certain criteria, the team does a relative kind of estimation. So let's say you have to build uh, a simple login functionality. So that is something that can be considered a user story, which may require less effort. You know what needs to be done. You already have the experience in developing that user story as a team. So maybe for you that is not a too complex kind of user story. So you may be assigning some low user story points to that particular story. But if you have to, let's say, create a cart page, or you have to develop a functionality where the user can uh, search or they can add multiple items to their cart, so that is maybe that will require a more effort. There may be some uncertainties associated to it. The team might not be having experience of doing it. So based on this, the team may decide that this user story will require some more effort. So they will assign that particular user story more user story points. So this is why we call or we say that in Agile we use a relative estimation rather than giving absolute timing that okay, uh, for this particular user story I will need 1 day or 2 days. This is not what we do in Agile. We do relative estimation. Uh, Time boxing is obviously an important feature. This comes in the form of sprints that we have, that you have 1 to 4 week sprint. So whatever user stories that we are uh, mm, uh, uh, finalizing. So an ideal user story, as we discussed in Agile part as well, should be such that it is something, the user stories has to be something which can be completed in one particular sprint. If it is not like this, so then maybe this is something that you need to work upon it and break it down further into smaller user stories. We talked about velocity as well, that velocity is an important measure which is used to, or a metric which is used to see how the team is performing sprint by sprint, and we try to maintain a sustainable pace that whatever user story points that we are completing sprint by sprint, we try to maintain a sustainable pace so that everyone knows that this much user story points we will be getting each and every sprint. Uh, to develop or to assign user story points, as we discussed, that user story points are assigned based on how much complex how or a user story the team thinks is, how much effort is required, what is the uncertainty revolving around it. So based on their analysis, the team will assign user story points, which are generally in this Fibonacci sequence, uh, uh, which is utilized to uh, give user story points. Or maybe the teams can also utilize this t-shirt sizing technique as well, where if a user story is where the t-shirt sizes are like this: small, medium, large, extra large. So they can assign this. So or maybe you can have an extra small one as well. So an extra small can be treated as having something user story point, and you can build it accordingly as you decide as a team.
So this
And to do
Fibonacci, Imran, the next user story points are coming out by adding last two, right? For example, 13.8 and then 21.
actually, Fibonacci sequence, we have this 2 as well, but generally what we see, we write it like this. But yes, 2 plus 1, 3, 3 plus 2, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, 8 plus 5, 13, and it just goes on like this.
Any specific reason to have this numbering series for the user story points? Any specific reason or just myth?
No, it's not a myth. Basically, this Fibonacci sequence, although honestly, I also do not have the complete story in mind right now, but as whatever I remember right now, that this is a sequence that we find in a lot of natural things as well. They say that if we see the plants, how their formation is, so that is also following this Fibonacci sequence where you are things are adding up like this. So maybe you can search it, and if you find something, I'll try to find some detail about it as well, and then we can share on the group as well with each other. But this is something that this guy Fibonacci found out in a lot of things that are nature related, and then he introduced this concept to the world, and now it is being utilized in this agile methodologies as well. Okay.
Okay, great.
So for estimating user stories, since we discussed that in Agile, we try to do everything in a consensus-based environment. So for user point estimation, we need to develop consensus among the team members that this is what the user story point related to each and every user story should be. So for that, the famous technique that is used is called planning poker, where you are given cards. Every team member is given cards that are numbered in the Fibonacci sequence, and product owner explains the user story to all the team members. They ask questions. They try to uh, develop their understanding, and once they are clear, so then they show their cards that this is what they think the user story point should be assigned to this particular user story, uh, like in this scenario. So now, once they show their cards, so everyone share their reasoning that why they think this should be the user story point to be assigned to this particular user story, and then they discuss about it. They share their ideas, share experiences, till they reach to a conclusion that this is what they think that this is the user story point that should be given to that particular user story, and this happens for each and every user story in a consensus based environment. So let's say in this scenario, initially these different team members, they given their estimates, and when they discuss, maybe this is someone who is new, he or she does not have that particular experience. So once they discuss all of these team members, they discuss in between, they share their ideas. So now maybe in the end they decide that 3 user story points should be sufficient for this particular user story, and this is how you develop consensus based on each and every user story point. And then these user story points go back to your product backlog, and there they are assigned against each user story.
So who managed
Uh,
this exercise? The Scrum Master or
Scrum
the
Master,
team?
Scrum Master, any ceremony Scrum Master. Okay.
Okay, right.
And we can utilize this t-shirt sizing technique we discussed about already. You can assign t-shirt sizing as well, which basically can correspond to again the Fibonacci sequence, and then you can start developing it accordingly. Again, there has to be consensus around it. So once we have the estimation ready, whether we are when we talk about the predictive methodology, so we have the estimations completed. We know how much duration is required for each and every activity. We know the network diagram as well. We know the dependencies as well. So then we can develop our schedule from start to end, and which can take form of any of the form. We can utilize this kind of chart as well, or whatever suits our requirement. So this will give us our complete project schedule, and which will become, once it is approved, we review it to our sponsor, our stakeholders, maybe steering committee if required, and once they approve it, it is acceptable to them. So that becomes our schedule baseline, and then we start following it as we go into the execution part of the project. So
one question, Imran.
mhm.
The estimation that is done at the time of RFP stage or at the proposal stage. I don't think so. That is detailed enough at that time, right? Of course, I mean, project manager is just available just to give the input, right? Okay. So what is the best way to give the input to the business analyst based on the analogous estimation, for example, based on the past projects that we did, and we can confirm, or what?
That will depend, obviously, depend on the on your requirement. Let's say because as we discussed that our project is part of a bigger picture. It may be part of a program or a portfolio. Okay, and there are some strategic reasoning behind every project or every initiative. So there has to be maybe some time frame bounded to that particular project, that the company or the organization assume that we need to complete it within this time frame, and then that high level schedule trickles down through your business case to your project charter. And once you are developing your schedule, and you complete your schedule, and you will be referring to your project charter as well, and you will be continuously trying to make
Correct.
sure that your schedule is aligned with your project charter and business case. And this is what you will be presenting then to your stakeholder to gain their approval. So again, they will also be referring to the project charter and the business case. And then maybe after discussion, maybe some tweaking, maybe you convince them or they convince you, maybe they allow you some more resources, because still you are planning.
Yeah.
So you can have some more budget, some more resources, so you can respect that particular timeline. So this is iterative kind of thing, and you try to respect that high level schedule that is already given to you in the project charter. Okay.
Okay, but I'm not. I didn't get the point actually. I mean, because so in that case, do we have to provide the estimation based on some past projects, or we have to do the working in such a detailed level that like we have to do after once a project chart once project is awarded and project manager is assigned?
You are talking about from the project perspective or from the timeline that is given at the time of business case preparation?
No, of course, I'm referring to, let's say, for example, one of the client, he, let's say, has to develop mobile app, let's say, right? Okay. So he has floated the tender, okay, and of course, he's expecting a proposal against that, right? So, of course, this is pre-project work, correct? Yeah, because project is not awarded yet. My point here is, I mean, of course, there are because I myself was involved into this part of the phase where business analysts came in and said, okay, this is something that we have to work out on the proposal. So they are coming up and asking for the estimates and the schedule to get the work done based on the scope of work, because there was of course scope of work there for the mobile application to be delivered, maybe user stories or the requirements. So my question is that this of course at that time there is a challenge to respond back immediately in a shortest time. So there is no in my opinion or my experience, there is no much time available to do the working in such a detailed level. We have to provide schedule, work out on the schedule, and have to make part of the proposal. So what is the best way to address that?
So generally at that point of time, we normally do rough order estimations.
Rough
Okay.
order is okay.
Which is can be like this. Maybe like this, or maybe 25 or 50%. Rough order estimation. You do rough order estimation. You share some qualitative kind of information based on your best experience or your experiences or whatever you think that for this particular scope we will be needing this much time. So so that is very rough order kind of thing, and then once you always keep some margin during that time, that okay, if I need to complete this project, let's say it will take 6 months, and once it is approved, so then you can start working on it. Okay, this is the scope and how I can complete it within the time. But
But
yes,
75% rough estimation
no, plus
will
minus
work.
25 generally, not 75. Okay.
Okay.
So and yes, your business analyst, they normally come to the relevant stakeholders or relevant parties who will be finally doing it, and they discuss. And based on that discussion, maybe you are giving them some ballpark figures. Okay, this should be more than enough. Then they can go back and start working on it accordingly.
Okay. So you mean
Yeah.
that I mean with the plus minus for 25% variation is good when we are I mean business is responding to the proposal.
Generally, this is what happens. This is what we all do. If someone comes to me out of the blue, okay, you need to do this. How much time will be you will be needing? I have enough experience that I can understand. Okay, but I always keep some cushion in my mind. If something that can be completed in a month, I'll say that oh, it will take 2 months or maybe for 50 days. This is
Right.
what we generally do, and this is what actually happens.
Okay. Okay. Clear. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Because at the time of need assessment and business case, everything is very high level, very high level. So you need to do some rough order estimation. There is no other workaround.
Right.
Okay, so now we have the project schedule, and once it is approved, it becomes our schedule baseline, and then we need to follow it accordingly. And there is one important technique that we utilize to find out that what is obviously when we are talking about a schedule. So a schedule means that there has for the complete project, it has a start date and a finish date, the entire duration of the project. So to find out the
It's a critical activity.
shortest duration of the project, that this is the minimum time that I will be needing to complete my project. For that, we utilize this critical path method technique, which basically gives us the shortest project duration, and that is basically the longest path in our
The activity.
network diagram. That is the longest path, and all the activities that fall on this longest path, we call them critical activities, because these are the activities which are so interlinked that we cannot afford any delay in those particular activities. If we do not have any slack or any float in between those activities. Float is basically, you can say, a flexibility or some time period that can be there between two activities. So any activity that is coming on the critical path, they do not have any float, any slack available, and any delay on this critical path will means that our project will get delayed. So utilizing this critical path method, we know that, okay, this is my network diagram. Let's say this is my network diagram. So what are the critical activities? Which activities are most critical that I cannot afford to delay? So I will be having a very close look on those activities to make sure that these are completed and started and completed on time, so that we can complete our project on time. So although this calculation it does not come in exam, but it's always good to know. Maybe out of the blue you may need to do some simple kind of calculation, but generally nowadays it is not there in the paper since last many years. But since this is part of curriculum, so we need to understand it. So this is how it works. Basically, any activity that we show on our network diagram, it has these some characteristics: that what is the early start time, what is the early finish time, what is the late start time, what is the late finish time, and then we have the activity duration in between. So let's do a very simple kind of example on this. So let's say this is my network diagram. Simple kind of network diagram. I only have 4 activities, and I know these are the durations for each activity. This will require 5 days, 5 days, 15, 10, 5, 10 and 15 days. So now let's just start building this or putting data into it. So how we start? First, we will enter the early start and early finish dates into it, which we call the forward pass. We are moving in the forward direction. So since this is activity 1, so it will start on day 1. I add duration to it, so it will be finishing on day 6. And when it is finished, then activity 2 will start and activity 3 will start, because we are assuming that there is no lead lag in between, a simple kind of network diagram. So adding the duration, now we come to know that this activity will finish on day 11 and this will finish on day 16. And when it comes to activity 4, this activity 4 is dependent on both these activities. So unless both these activities finish, only then we can start activity 4. So activity 3 is finishing on day 16, so it means it can be started on day 16. And now I know that I will be needing 31 days to complete the project after doing this calculation. So in next step, what we need to do, we need to put entries for the late finish and late start dates, okay, which we call the backward pass. Okay, so now what happens? 31, it will come as it is. We subtracted 16 here. This 16 will come here because both are associated to it. So 11 and 6, and we have the same values here. So now this is backward pass. Okay, so now in this scenario, what we considered, we added that highest of the two. Okay, and now since we are doing the reverse pass, so what we need to do, that the lowest of the two will go here, and we will again come back to the day 1. So now we have completed the forward pass and the backward pass as well. So now we need to calculate how much float is there for each and every activity, how much margin or cushion is there for these different activities. So for this, what we do, we simply subtract these two values, the late start and the early start dates for all the activities. So 1 minus 1, 0, 5, 0, and 0. So now all the data or all the values are there in this diagram. So Now this will tell me which is my critical path. All the activities where we have zero float, they form my critical path. And in this case, my critical path is activity A1, activity 1, activity 3,
A3,
and
A4,
activity 4.
A4.
So this is my critical path. So once I know my critical path, so this is basically the longest, the shortest project duration, and the longest path in my network diagram. And I need to be very careful about these three activities, because any delay on these activities means that my overall duration will suffer. And that's why I need to be very careful about these activities. Okay, very simple
Imran,
kind of.
can you go back to the previous slide?
Yes. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the backward pass, what you considered here for when you are referring to 11 and 6? So what you are considering here to get 6?
The lesser of the two.
The lesser of the two.
Yeah, when we are doing the forward pass, so we take the higher of the two.
Okay.
And when we are doing the for backward pass, so we take the lesser of the two.
Okay. Okay. Then when while calculating the float, can you go? Yeah.
Yeah, for float calculation, we subtract these two values, the late start minus the early start. These two.
Only for the first activity or for all activities?
No, for all. 11, 6, 5, 6, 6, 0, 16 minus 16, 0.
Okay. Good. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because we have to get the float right, and based on
Yeah.
that we have to define
Yeah.
critical path. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will tell me that, okay, this is the most important path that I need to be very careful of. And when we are talking about a schedule, so there are some other techniques which we call resource optimization techniques that we may need to employ based on certain scenarios. The first one of these is resource leveling. What happens that when we prepare our initial schedule, okay, so this may look like this, okay, where in week 1 we are working this many hours, and then this many hours in week 3 we have some more work to do, and in week 4 we are doing work like this. But what if we have a limitation from the organization that we cannot go beyond 40 hours work limit for each week? So in this scenario, this schedule that I have prepared, it will not work. It will not be allowed. So maybe I need to then respect that 40-hour time limit. So once I start to level the resources based on this limitation, so this will increase my schedule.
Yeah.
Rather than completing in week 4 weeks, it is going to week 5. So and this can also happen in scenarios where maybe you need same resource in different weeks or in different tasks. So in that scenario, we need to again utilize resource leveling to make sure that resource is available for all the activities. So in that scenario also, I need to maybe expand my schedule a bit.
With the
So
shared resource,
this
you mean?
shared resource, yeah, some shared resource, or maybe initially you have done scheduling like this, that there is an overlap coming. The same resource is required on, yes, shared
Other
resource.
projects.
The same
Yeah.
resource is required on other activity as well. So in that scenario, we may need to do the resource leveling or employ this technique, and this can increase our critical path. Okay.
Yeah.
Because, but again, this is something when we are planning, we need to take this into account, and for any such scenario, we can utilize this resource leveling technique to make sure that we have a proper kind of schedule that we can follow. The other is resource smoothing. What resource smoothing does, that if you have a lot of irregularities, resource leveling generally works or required when we have the activities on the critical path. Okay, because critical path activities are such that there is no float available in between those activities, and if any activity that is on my critical path and I need to tweak it some around due to some resource level constraints, then I have no option maybe to increase the duration for that activity. As in our previous example where we saw that, let's say this is my activity 3, and it requires a resource that is working on maybe this activity as well. So in that scenario, what I need to do, if I need to delay this activity due to the resource related constraints, so then I have no option but to increase my schedule. I need to give some time. But resource smoothing is generally utilized or employed on activities that are not on the critical path. Like in this example, I have this activity. This activity is not on critical path. I have 5 days cushion available here. Okay. And in this scenario, if I see that the resource may not be required on, let's say, day 6, the resource may be available on day 8. So again, it will not impact my schedule for this activity, because ultimately it will still finish on day 13. Whereas I can delay it till day 16, because the activity 3 will be completing on day 16, and only then we can move to activity 4. So this is what where we utilize resource smoothing, when we have where we employ this strategy on activities that are on the non-critical path, where we have the float available, where we have the room available, and where we can tweak some things without affecting the overall schedule. So the point to remember is that resource leveling will result in increasing our schedule, whereas resource smoothing will not affect our schedule. Resource leveling is generally utilized on critical path activities, and the activities that are not on the critical path, we have the float available. So there we can easily employ the resource smoothing technique. Okay. And then we have some schedule compression techniques as well. One is crashing, and the next one is fast tracking. Crashing is adding more resources. We add more resources.
Just one question, Imran. Where there is a
Mhm.
float available, can you go back to previous slide? Yeah, previous one. Previous
This
one.
one.
No, previous
This one.
where there is a yeah, this one. So for example, activity 2 is having a float, right? 5. Yeah.
5 days. Yes.
5 days. So and activity basically 6 is having a 0 float. Yeah. So in any case, if resource complete the activity number 2, so activity number 4 cannot be started without completing activity 3, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
my question here is, can we say that the activities which are having a float, so we can utilize those resources after completing the activities
Yeah.
in other maybe initiatives,
Yes. Yes.
with the of course knowing the fact that because the for activity 4 has to be started on 16th. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, let's say you complete this activity on day 1. Okay. And now these resources are free. So
Mm,
since this is a very simple kind of diagram, let's say there are some more activities. So you can, by looking at this, you can utilize those resources to some other activity. You can
Yeah.
move them there.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And when talking about schedule compression, if we need to compress our schedule, let's say we need to complete some work faster and the activities are on the critical path. So for critical path activities, what option we have to reduce their duration? We need to add extra resources, obviously.
Resources, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So this is what we adding extra resources means is basically what we call crashing, when we add extra resources to critical path activities to complete them faster, because this is the only option I have to squeeze my schedule. If
Correct.
I can reduce the schedule or time frame for my critical path activities. So adding extra resources will mean that we need extra cost because we will be requiring additional resources. So whenever we, so there are 2 points to remember here. Crashing is done on critical path activities, okay, and it will increase the project cost.
Correct.
And one more point maybe that it can have some risk maybe as well. But just remember these 2 points. It will increase cost and it will require additional resources, and it is employed on critical path activities. And what is fast tracking? Fast tracking is basically done on activities that are that can be done in parallel, where we have the leverage and we can start activities in parallel. Initially, they may be planned in a sequence, but to reduce time frame, maybe we can start some activities in parallel, but it can have an impact on risks can increase, and we may need to do have some rework done. So this is what 2 techniques that we can utilize when it comes to schedule compression.
Question. For the crashing part where the cost change actually is involved. So, in such a scenario, I mean, for sure we have to engage the stakeholders, but probably in my this is it required sponsor approval as well, or this is something that project manager can done along with the stakeholder alignment or with the customer alignment as well.
Okay, let's say you are making your schedule for the first time. Okay, so now there you see that okay, maybe I need to compress my schedule and I need to add some resources on my critical path, and then you take it to your sponsor and any approvers for final approval. So if it is approved, then well and good, you can go ahead with it. If it is not approved, then maybe you need to tweak it and get the approval. Once the approval is done, once the schedule is baseline, and any change later on, so obviously you need to do the impact analysis, you need to get the approval and then start doing it accordingly. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Usman, you have something.
Yes. So, for instance, for crashing, we need to add new resources, right, to complete the project critical path. But I mean, from my perspective or experience, I mean, when we add new resources, it also add risk and potential for rework.
Exactly.
So why does PMI only specifies this for fast tracking, not for crashing, and also the vice versa? Because from perspective,
PMI is not specifying. Maybe I have written it like this only here, but yes, these things can happen there as well.
Yes.
Okay, but the point to remember for these 2 techniques is that crashing is utilized on critical path activities and it will require additional resources. Okay. Whereas fast tracking is done on activities that can be started in parallel in C, where initially they may be planned in a sequence, but to compress your timelines, uh, you can start, you think, or you try to start doing them in parallel. It will not ask for any additional budget or anything, but it will have this potential of risk and rework. Okay. And control schedule is simply doing the plan versus actuals, how we are performing based on the schedule that we have prepared. Are we doing as per plan, or there are any deviations? And then based on that, we can do some rectification work if required. This earned value management is an important technique that we utilize. This we will talk about in cost management topic next in our next session. And this variance is also part of earned value management. So we'll talk about it. We will be having a lot of work performance information coming in through this control schedule. We may be based on the data that is coming, this plan versus actual data, so that will help us in forecasting as well, that this is how we will be doing. So if we forecast, if we keep on working like this, so how we will be ending up, so that will also tell us that whether we are on track or we are lagging behind. This is what this control schedule process is all about.
Just one question, Imran. So once the baseline is approved, then let's say if adjustment happens in the schedule, so that would be the applicable baseline, we can say B2 version, right? For the rest of the life cycle of the project, or we have to keep both version?
No, the whatever the approved version is, that is your baseline.
Applicable.
Yeah, you will be following it. Okay.
Okay, right.
Okay, so now let's talk about how we control schedule in Agile. So in Agile, we have these three charts that we can utilize to see how we are performing. Yes, Usman?
Sorry for interjecting. I think can we conclude for today? I think because these topics are important and
just 3 slides are left. Okay. I know we had a lot of discussion, so we
yes.
are going beyond the scheduled time, but there are just 3 slides and very basic kind of charts. So it will not take more time, I guess. To monitor a schedule or control a schedule in Agile environment, we have these 3 charts that we can utilize. Velocity chart we already discussed a couple of times, and then we have burn down charts and burn up charts as well. So what is a burn down chart? Burn down chart basically tells us the amount of work that remains to be completed after each iteration or after each sprint. So it basically tells us that whether we are on track, we are on schedule, or we are behind schedule, or we are ahead of schedule. So let's say this is our release burn down chart. We have the sprints or releases here, and we have the user story points. And this is how we initially planned it, that we will be requiring 7 iterations or 7 sprints, and we have in total 120 user story points to complete. And sprint by sprint, we planned that we will be completing 20 user story points. Okay. So after each sprint, we calculate how much user story points we are completing, or how much user story points are now left. This is important to understand for the burn down chart, that this basically tells us how much amount of work is remaining remains to be completed. So let's say at this point of time, at the end of third sprint, we should be left with 80 user story points. But what actually we are seeing that we are left with 100 user story points. So what this is telling us that we are behind schedule. We should have completed 80, but we have completed only, we should be left with 80 user story points, but we are left with 100 user story points. So this is telling us that something is wrong here. We are behind schedule, and then maybe the team, the scrum master, and they can discuss that what is not working, why this is happening, and then you try to rectify it. Maybe the team initially overcommitted and whatever. So this will give us an idea that where are we in terms of our schedule. Like at this point of time, after fourth sprint, the team did some magic, and they covered all the gap. In fact, they performed way beyond expectation. So ideally, 60 user story points should have been left, but right now they have only 30 user story points remaining. So this is how the burn down chart can help us in understanding how we are performing sprint by sprint, and then we can. So in exam, you can have this kind of question. You are given this diagram, and you are supposed to, and they ask you that, let's say you are given 4 points here, point A, point B, point C, or maybe let's say point D. And they ask you that at which point of time, obviously this thing will not be written there. So they ask you that at which point the project is behind schedule. So you need to understand that this is the point where you are behind schedule. Okay. Or maybe they can ask you ahead of schedule, so then you need to, this will be your answer. Okay. So this is how a burn down chart can help us in tracking how much work remains to be completed after each sprint. The burn up chart, this basically tracks the amount of work that we are completing over time. Okay. After each iteration or whatever we are, and how the user story points we are completing. So let's say this was the initial scope of work. You had to complete this much user story points, and this was the timeline that you need to in which you have to complete this work. So this is basically telling us this is a date-wise chart. So on every day, how much user story points we are completing. Okay, and this not only calculates or tells us about the work that was initially planned, or the features or the user story points that were there, but this also informs us about if later down the stage any new work is also added. Maybe after some time your client asked you to add some more user stories to your product backlog. So this will also tell us about any work that is added later on in your project, and any work that is removed to meet the schedule. Because if you remember that our scope is variable, but our schedule and cost is generally fixed in Agile. So this burn-up chart will tell us that how we are completing certain amount of work, and if there is any work added or removed later on during the project. So this burn-up chart will tell us about, or share information about that as well. And velocity chart, we talked about this already. This is just to see how the team is performing on average basis, how many user story points they are completing, and this is used to track the performance of the team, that what they are delivering, committing, whether they are able to deliver it accordingly or not. And based on whatever velocity that is coming iteration by iteration, you try to maintain that as you go along. So let's say you have this project where initially you planned it to complete in 4 iterations, and you had to complete, let's say, uh, 30 user story points. But as your data is coming, you are able to complete only 25. So at this stage, at this point of time, you see that 90 should have been completed, but you are at 75. So to complete these overall 90, oh sorry, 120 has to be completed, but you are right now at no, I was right. So at this point of time, you should have completed 90, but you are completing only 25 or 75. So it means your average velocity is coming out to be 25 user story points. So to complete all those 120 maybe user stories points, you may require one additional uh, sprint to complete that work. And this is how you can utilize velocity charge to forecast that how much additional time you may be needing. And then again, it is up to your stakeholder, your product owner, whether they want to give you that cushion or they are fine with whatever you will be delivering at the fourth sprint. Okay, so this was it about the schedule management part. This is the longest this topic has taken me so far in all the sessions. So almost 2.5 hours. Usually I complete it in maybe 1.5 hour, but it took us a lot of time. But anyhow, it's good that we are having discussions in between as well, and we are clarifying any things as we go along. But as usual, only 2 of the people are talking, and rest I don't know whether they are listening or they are sleeping or whatever. But
Just one question, Imran, for burn down chart and
अभी सर क्विज में पता लग जाएगा.
yeah, that's good point. That's a good point.
for burn down chart, burn down and burned up chart. So this calculations basically, either we are behind or above the schedule. So we have to refer to the data in the product log, right? Product backlog, because that is having all the details. Or we have to, because that is the having all the details, right?
The product backlog, it basically has your overall user stories, prioritize list of user stories or features that you will be developing. Okay. But based on your estimation, let's say the team decides or that this is how we will be delivering that. Initially, they planned that we will be delivering, let's say, 25 user story points each if sprint. Okay, so this is an assumption or commitment that they have done. And once they start building it, they see what is their velocity coming and how they are able to perform. So then they can maybe tweak it, because ideally, uh, plan versus actual always has some deviations. So how the data starts coming in, so then maybe you can tweak, you can see that whether we are performing well or we are behind what we committed, and then you can maybe adjust your commitment as well, because what we want to achieve is a sustainable pace. And
Yeah,
then
that's fine. Yeah,
yeah,
that's fine. I'm just referring to the, I mean the data in the product backlog that we can use it for, let's say, to record the let's say commitment when then the sprint about deliver, record it, and then we can prepare this burn down and up down charts, right?
Not exactly. Product backlog will basically just tell us that this is how the priority is, and maybe what is already completed or delivered and what is left. Okay.
Okay.
And then initially, as we discussed, that maybe initially you plan that this is how we will be delivering, and then you, as the results start coming in, so then you can gauge that this is how much user story points that we are completing in every sprint, and this priority of user stories can go up and down in the product backlog as per the priority that is needed by the stakeholders.
No, but the user stories which will be prioritized, that will go into the sprint backlog, right? Ultimately, I mean,
Yeah. But
the,
but the but that sprint backlog, whatever user story is coming in, let's say. So let's say you have committed that I will be completing 25 user story points. So whatever you will be taking into your sprint backlog, whatever user stories you will be taking in, this should not be more than 25 because this is what you committed now. Apart from which user story is there that you are taking from the product backlog into the user store into your sprint backlog, but the sum of the user story points should not be more than this. What you committed, you will try to deliver it.
so those committed work would be in then the sprint backlog.
Yeah, ideally, whatever you have committed or you planned that I will be delivering 25 user story points per sprint, so you will try to accommodate that in your sprint backlog in every sprint.
So then sprint by backlog, probably we can use that data to build this burn down and burned up chart, right? I'm just asking, and who would be the responsible, the Scrum Master who will be responsible to do such kind of analysis, or team?
No, Scrum Master.
Scrum Master.
So let's say
Okay.
now this is your plan of 25. You plan 25. You in your first sprint you pick 25 user story points, but you were able to complete only 20. Okay. So this is what your velocity came in. You planned 25, but you completed 20. And let's say same happened in the next sprint as well. Same happened in the next sprint as well. So what is your average velocity now coming in? You are only able to complete 20 user story points. So from now on, you should be planning that your plan should be modified to 20 user story points.
Yeah,
This
that
is
is clear.
yeah.
That is clear. My question was only related to that which data we can use. I mean, because of course we would be having the details of the user stories that we planned and team gave the commitment to be delivered in each of the sprint, right?
Yeah.
And then we will be, I mean, maybe Scrum Master will be recording it. That okay, for example, these sprint 1, 5 were planned and 4 were delivered, for example, right? So this data for sure would be managing by someone.
Yeah.
So that can be used for burn down and burned up charts.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so let's do the quiz if you guys want to do it, or shall we call the night or day off for today?
I am fine, but I'm not sure about rest. I'm still having energy. 30 more minutes.
यानी
So
क्लास
there
का वो
are
बचा है जो सबको मरवा दे.
ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ ਅਸੀਂ
We
ਵੀ ਇਹੀ
have-
ਕਵਾਂਗੇ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ
So we have only 5 questions. So I'll take the call then if no one is
I think
saying
let's-
anything. So
I think let's go
let's
with it.
let's what?
कंटिन्यू करो.
Let's
Okay.
go with it. Let's continue.
Okay, then this is the first one.
West.
Yes, good. B is the right answer. Second one. Yes, good. First, you need to do the analysis before deciding on any of the options. Good. Third one. Okay, so majority of you have given B and 2Ds. So let's ask anyone why you think B is the answer. These two were the important terms here.
Uncertainty. Well,
This-
analogous is based on the
historical data.
historical data. Yeah.
So it is not considering uncertainty. The historical data may not be that accurate or may not be valid. So analogous is not the right answer. And what about those who mentioned D? Zain and Usman.
Yeah.
Any one of you?
I chose D because it considers each activity and then builds on that. So if there is a risk, and say in the first step, that gets incorporated into the next one. So that was my thinking about for choosing bottom up.
But how does that consider the uncertainty and risk elements? Yes, this can be an accurate method uh, because of the detail involved, but it does not necessarily specifically focus on uncertainty and risk for each activity.
Yes. So I believe my thinking was that parametric analogous, they are done on the overall, let's say, project level, or let's say on the overall certain scope level. 3 point
Yes, yes.
3 point is done for
Optimistic, pessimistic.
various cases, which includes most likely, highly unlikely, and optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. And
Yeah.
bottom up is cover almost every step of
That
the
is, hmm,
WBS.
that is more time consuming and based on WBS, bottom up.
Hmm.
But I
And
think
the
from uncertainty and this perspective, bottom up estimating is not the right answer. I think, as I'm looking into it.
so
Yes.
3 point is a range, Imran. I mean, in the range of,
Yeah,
let's
and
say,
that is why it is the right answer for this, because you have three different ranges which can take into detail some uncertainty and risk. You have the optimistic schedule as well. You have the pessimistic and most likely one. So, utilizing this 3 point estimation, we can uh, somehow come to a conclusion or some estimate, which is kind of a weighted average kind of estimate, where we compare these three uh, estimates that we have uh, to come to something, or to get some value that basically somehow deals with uncertainty or risk involved in it. Because when we are taking three different estimates into account, that what could be the optimistic value, what could be the pessimistic, and what could be the most likely one. So there we are more covered in terms of uncertainty and risk rather than the other three methods that are mentioned here.
hmm,
Okay. All right. So this is the fourth one. And by the way, this could be an exam question, so आप इसका रट्टा भी लगा सकते हैं. ये third one. I'm talking about the third one. Okay, so everyone has given A as the right answer. All of you. Why? Anyone?
Well, I considered like
What
fixed
do you
sprint
mean
length.
by fixed schedule
Maybe I
in
assume that
option A?
yeah, fixed schedule is fixed length of the sprint.
No, we are talking about the a complete project. Uh, why fixed schedule in Agile?
Yeah. I think this is wrong. Yeah, I think C maybe.
Yes, C is the
C
right
is the
answer.
right answer. Yeah,
Where we
yeah,
have time box sprints and
yes.
scheduling can be iterative, as we just saw the example as well. That maybe you may be needing some more sprint depending on how your velocity is coming. So maybe your stakeholders allow you to get that additional sprint because they want the complete scope to be delivered. Or they may ask you that, okay, we do not want the complete 100 user story points. Let's stop it at 75. So maybe your schedule you can close it earlier as well. So in Agile, uh, we have iterative scheduling, and time boxing is an important aspect of Agile.
I was toggling between A and C, so so fixed schedule actually is I mean based on the
Predictive
predictive. Yeah,
basically, yeah.
I,
Fifth one,
change and schedule.
let's see how you guys answer this. This we discussed couple of times. If you recall the change management process, then this should be a very easy one. Okay, so how many answers we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all. Okay. All right, so let's dissect the options. Okay. Change is approved. Okay. So what does this mean? Whenever a change is submitted, what is the first step that we do? We record it in change log.
And do the
Okay.
impact analysis.
We do impact analysis. And when we are talking about scope, the change is related to scope. It means that the change related to scope can have an impact on the schedule as well, okay, on the budget as well, on the risk as well. So when we are talking about impact analysis, so the impact analysis is not only done on a scope part, but it is done on all the areas of the project. So when we are doing impact assessment, so this we must have been doing that how this change in scope will be affecting the risks related to the project. So this is done part of this impact analysis. Uh, Perform a critical path analysis. This was also should have been done as part of impact analysis because this information will also be going to
Impact.
our stakeholders. where,
Yeah.
or our change control board, when we are sharing this impact analysis, this is something we cannot assume that maybe this project scope actually is about reducing the scope.
Yeah.
It's
This
not
is
mentioned that it is
Yes, I
increasing your
realized it
scope.
later.
So these two are part of impact analysis. This is wrong to assume. We do the impact analysis, we submit it to change control board, they approve it. So we update the change log and we update the baselines. So in this case, since the schedule baseline is mentioned, so this is the right answer. Okay.
No, but what is the most immediate action, right?
And this is the immediate action. This was done part of impact analysis, B and D. Okay. We are at this stage now. This is where we are.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my
So
God.
this is
I was sure that C and D both are incorrect. Yeah, because
okay.
then I thought maybe in the impact analysis there might be some risk assessment.
Risk
So
assessment is also part of impact analysis.
yeah.
Basically, if
I
I
think
believe the
the important thing is
change was
knowing
just
the
suggested.
keywords,
Yeah, Zan, please
focusing
go
on
ahead.
the keywords. I think that's what's important.
Yeah, that's why I immediately highlighted these two words. Change and it is approved.
Yeah, that is very right. Yeah, so both
So
are.
for predictive and even for hybrid projects, when we are talking about predictive, so if you understand this sequence, then it will be easier to answer these type of questions. Okay, so that's it for the day. Almost 3 hours. Anyways, thank you for your patience. We had a very long session tonight, but it's good that we concluded this schedule part as well. So let's call it a day then.
Yeah, thank you.
See you on Saturday, inshallah. So take care. Bye bye.
Inshallah. All right. Allah Hafiz.
जी अल्लाह
Allah
हाफिज जी
Hafiz.